Good morning, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Have a good day, everyone, and God bless you. Alright, let's get into the news this Wednesday morning. And you already know that the FBI, the Biden regime, of course, the DOJ has descended upon Trump in his house in Mar-a-Lago, and had conducted a search and raid, broke into his safe, and among other things. If you've been watching this channel for any length of time, especially over the course of the last 2 weeks, I told you, this was going to be happening. As we get closer to the midterms, there was going to be an October surprise. Was Donald Trump a surprise? Of course, was to arrest Trump. These are the steps that they're trying to take. However, the media is now recognizing the grave mistake they have done, the DOJ, the Biden regime, and pursuing this avenue. This is the same thing that we talked about 2 weeks ago here on the channel, talking about if they were to do this, it would unify the Make America Great, that America First, and the Republican normies into one cohesive unit and battling back against this regime, and that is what they did last night with raiding Trump's house. CNN is very nervous right now. And they have every right to be very nervous because they know how this is going to play out. And they are having a coping session live on air. We'll go and dive into that in just a moment. Now this is unprecedented. The Democrats' divided regime has crossed the Rubicon in this. There is no going back. They have now greenlit the revenge tour of 2024, the revenge tour of MAGA. They have now set into motion things that will now come back to haunt them once Republicans, America First Republicans, and President Trump return back to office. They are going to rue the day that they went after him the way they have. However, because they did this, now the momentum has dramatically shifted back to Trump. Everyone listen to this. Yeah, though. That's very interesting. The messaging from Republicans. They're seeing maybe benefit going into the midterms on this, unless the day is Ron DeSantis. Well, for any or anybody else who was planning on running for the Republican nomination in 2024. Look, this just happened. So the ramifications are still completely or mostly unknown. But in the short term, what it looks like is exactly what Alyssa said. I mean, I cannot tell you how many Republicans I have talked to who have said that just the political way that he handled this is vintage Trump, and for his short-term political goal, which if it is in fact to get the Republican nomination under genius, because he has wrapped us all been looking at the buzzwords he used in that statement, Occupy raid. I mean, he basically said it was the deep state which totally triggers and animates the people who not only who like him, but there was concern according to people around Trump that he was losing some mojo, who was having some trouble raising money. And this he believes. Yes, they are nervous, and that is how they're speaking right now over to CNN and other places, because they know the ramifications of this. And, of course, if Republicans don't get their act together, they need to go ahead and move in a direction to defund the FBI and other three-letter agencies. This does not stop with just some strongly worded letters and some hearings. No, you go after them. You sit there and you defund these departments and you crater them, so they're no longer able to operate. This is what you must do. Make them pay. And, time goes by in a short time frame or a long time frame. For the most part, a lot of things stay the same, really in the end, especially when it comes to people, not much changes. And when it comes to Kamala Harris, that statement is absolutely true. Time has gone by and Kamala Harris still remains as an absolutely terrible politician and possibly an even worse human being. All I ask is, in certain situations, people know their place, on certain topics and certain issues, I don't necessarily know what I'm talking about. So what I do is I take a step back, and I let the highly educated and the experts discuss, and maybe I'll ask questions and chime in here and there. And in situations where I may be a hypocrite taking a particular stance or trying to make a certain point, well, I won't get involved, because I know if I did say something, then I'd be an absolute massive hypocrite. But that sort of self-awareness to know when and when not to say things, being a normal level-headed human being. Yeah, that's not Kamala Harris. And the question remains, just like Jill Biden and Nancy Pelosi and all these other left-wing elitist Democrat hacks. The question I'm always asking myself is, do they not get it? Do they not see the obvious? And especially with Kamala Harris, does she not have the ability to realize that taking a stance on this particular issue is going to make her look absolutely terrible, knowing her track record in her past careers in the state of California? But apparently, Either Kamala Harris or her team are too incompetent, or they just don't care and are willing to be massive, utter hypocrites because they know the media's gonna let them get away with it anyways. Well, Kamala Harris has zero, and I mean zero, a big fat zero, self-awareness. This will Brittney Griner situation, being sentenced to 9.5 years in prison by the Russian court system. Well, the literal last person that should ever speak on this issue in the political realm as Kamala Harris. Let me show you guys what's going on here. She's getting absolutely torched on Twitter. We got some stuff to get into. So let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so like I said, some things never change. Kamala Harris, being the worst human being, never changes. And apparently Tulsi Gabbard absolutely shredded Kamala Harris. Well, that hasn't changed either. Tulsi Gabbard shreds Kamala Harris over response to Grindr sentencing. Former Democrat Hawaii Representative Tulsi Gabbard tore into Vice President Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor, over her response to the imprisonment and sentence of WNBA star Brittney Griner and Russia. Here's Kamala tweets: with today's sentencing, Russia continues its wrongful detention of Brittney Griner. She should be released immediately at POTUS, and I and our entire administration are working every day to reunite Brittney as well as Paul Whelan with loved ones who miss each of them dearly. Tulsi Gabbard reacted to Kamala Harris' tweet live on Fox. Everyone listen to this. The thing that struck me when I saw Kamala Harris tweet and her statement expressing this. First of all, let me say, I don't think anybody anywhere in the world should be imprisoned for marijuana possession, period, full stop. When you look at Kamala Harris' statement on Twitter, she's expressing this outrage about Brittney Griner. My question for her in the Biden administration is, where is your outrage for your fellow Americans who are sitting in prison today here in the United States of America because of minor marijuana violations? How come you are not fighting as hard for them to be returned home and reunited with their families as you are for Brittney Griner? And to me, the message to the American people through their actions is loud and clear, is that if you are rich and powerful or famous, then you will get special treatment from this administration. If you are not, we don't care about you, and we're going to let you sit there and rot in jail. Unfortunately, like too many politicians, it seems like she puts her finger to the wind and decides what things she's supposed to be angry about on any given day. And then if it becomes politically inconvenient or damaging, then she'll switch the other way. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, Kamala Harris is literally the last person who should be speaking on this particular issue. We got to do is a little flashback to Tulsi Gabbard taking down Kamala Harris during the 2019-2020 Democrat primary ahead of the presidential election. A Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their senses to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way. I mean, the articles are everywhere. The facts are clear how Kamala Harris fought to keep nonviolent prisoners locked up as California Attorney General. She spent years subverting a 2011 Supreme Court ruling requiring the state to reduce its prison population. The overseeing judicial panel nearly found the state in contempt of court. Campaign fact check. Here's how Kamala Harris really prosecuted marijuana cases. San Francisco. Kamala Harris opponents and critics have picked apart her prosecution of marijuana crimes during her presidential run, knocking her for her over-aggressive jailing of pot users and lambasted her as a hypocrite for saying that she now supports the legalization of this substance. Harris oversaw more than 1,900 marijuana convictions in San Francisco, previously unreported records. From the Dia is Off His show, her prosecutors appear to have convicted people on marijuana charges at a higher rate than under her predecessor based on data about marijuana arrests in the city. Top cop. Kamala Harris was a hawk, putting people in jail for nonviolent drug offenses, trying to keep the prison population high and keep them in there as long as possible. And now we're supposed to sit here and take Kamala Harris seriously as she fights for Brittney Griner's release and claims that Russia continues its wrongful detention of Brittney Griner. Another absolutely absurd statement. The White House previously claimed that Russia was keeping Brittney Griner as a hostage. The words they continue to use to describe the situation are utterly dishonest and disingenuous. Brittney Griner is not a hostage. Brittney Griner is not being wrongfully detained. Basic state sovereignty needs to be respected. It's something that must be respected. When you go to a particular country, you must abide by the laws of said country the moment you pass over the border. That reality is something everybody has to respect and live by. And just because you're a fancy left-wing celebrity doesn't mean those rules don't apply to you. The whole situation is just ridiculous. I mean, do I feel bad for Brittney Griner? Absolutely. Does it suck? Is it a situation? Absolutely. But she is not being wrongfully detained. She is not a hostage. She is merely facing the consequences of her poor decision-making. It's that simple. And all we're seeing from the Biden administration here is them trying to capitalize on this situation. They know that Brittney Griner, notorious anthem kneeler, notorious America hater, and woke leftist icon, is popular with the left-wing Twitter base, and so they're trying to do everything in their power, regardless of how ridiculous they sound and how hypocritical they are, to get her back. I really think it's starting to backfire. Kamala Harris on this one probably should have just taken a backseat and not opened her mouth. I mean, it's very recent history. It's baked into people's minds that top cop Kamala Harris, major hypocrite Kamala Harris, Mrs. I used to smoke the reefer back in college and listen to Tupac and Snoop Dogg while simultaneously prosecuting 1,900 marijuana cases. Well, the irony, the hypocrisy isn't lost on your average person who's paying attention. This whole thing continues to backfire. Joe Biden planning on trading a notorious Russian arms dealer for Brittney Griner again. Not something that most people are viewing as a favorable trade, because probably most people are smart enough to realize that if they traveled to Russia and went through Russia and customs carrying illegal substances, and they were subsequently arrested, well, because they aren't fancy leftist liberal left-wing activists icon Brittney Griner. They aren't some celebrity with name recognition or face recognition that they would be left there to rot in prison. And nobody would even know that they exist, just like the 1,900 people that Kamala Harris sentenced to prison time for the same kind of offenses in the state of California. This whole situation is a complete mess. And funnily enough, Obama said it best himself all those years ago: never underestimate Joe Biden's ability to F things up. Obama said, well, never underestimate the Biden-Harris administration's ability to F things up, and here we go again. That's exactly what they're doing, misstep at every single turn in their political stock. Their political image continues to tank as a result. The Biden administration is basically running a clinic on how not to run a government and how not to do foreign policy and diplomacy. And actually, once again, now that I think about it, another thing that remains the same and hasn't changed or isn't changing with timing is Kamala Harris need to fire literally everybody who works with her. I mean, we've seen the messaging blunders coming out of the vice president's office for nearly 2 years now, but seriously, who is consulting and advising Kamala Harris to be coming out publicly as the White House spokesperson against Brittney Griner being imprisoned in Russia? She is literally the last person to speak on this issue, and the fact that she nor her team couldn't realize that shows you exactly how dumb these people really are. Thanks for sticking around. Follow me daily. I will do my best to show you. There's a lot of information that shows what's going on. Remember where we go.